If I told you that Japan's strongest sport isn't judo, isn't sumo, and isn't baseball, but football, you might be a little surprised. Hold on, don't dismiss it just yet. Let me explain. For most people, Japan's athletic strengths probably include judo, karate, sumo, baseball, football, table tennis, swimming, badminton, figure skating, marathon running, fencing, boxing, esports. But here is the question. What does strongest really mean? I break it down into two criteria. One is the strongest sport, the other is the best results. Then we try to make a fair comparison. First, let's rule out judo, karate, and sumo. Not because they aren't strong, but because they're more like cultural advantage sports. Their influence and competitive environment simply don't exist on a global level. Including them would actually be unfair. It is like comparing operating systems, but only giving Windows its own ranking, or talking about phones but only debating which version of iOS is better. That is not comparison, that is bias. Next, table tennis and swimming get ruled out. The reason is simple, they're individual sports. They make it easier to produce superstars, but they rarely reflect the depth or structure of a country's entire sports system. Then there is badminton, figure skating, marathon, fencing, and boxing. Japan has had good results in these sports, and even world-class athletes. But they all share one problem: strong but inconsistent, more like short-term bursts, rather than long-term systematic strength. Esports is also out. On one hand, its global influence is still growing. On the other, Japan's advantages are mostly in fighting games, so the structure isn't balanced. At this point, only two options remain: baseball and football. If it were in the past, I would have picked baseball without hesitation. It is stable, structured, highly competitive, and strongly team-oriented. In terms of honor and dominance, it is undeniably solid. But here is the problem. The world of baseball is actually small. The countries that compete at the highest level are few. Football is different. It is the sport with the most participants and the fiercest global competition. And that is why we need a different lens to measure the value of Japanese football. Yes, they often exit at the round of 16 in the World Cup, but the point is, they almost never miss the tournament and consistently reach that stage. In one of the most brutal competitive systems on the planet, being in the world's top 16 for decades is itself a strength that is often underestimated. Later, I talked about this with a Chinese friend, and he offered a completely different perspective. He said, even though the Chinese team rarely appears at the World Cup, many Chinese fans quietly follow Japan's matches, because Japan represents the highest level of football in East Asia, even Asia as a whole. That line stuck with me. Due to some well-known historical reasons, most Chinese and Korean people find it hard to emotionally embrace Japan. But precisely because of that, when they still watch and even tacitly acknowledge this representation, it is no longer just about results. It is about undeniable strength. So when it comes to the question of strongest, I give the edge to football. Finally, I want to leave you with a century-old puzzle. Why do countries with enormous resources, population, and wealth often struggle at football? The United States, China, Russia, India. Many people ask, with so much money and so many people, why is it so hard to produce a player like Diego Maradona, Messi, or Cristiano Ronaldo? Thanks for thinking with me. If you enjoy exploring ideas like this, you might consider subscribing. I'm hoping this channel might slowly gather a small group of curious minds who enjoy thinking about the world together.